Hello and welcome to the Blue Collar Wealth Club. I am one of your hosts, Sheena Garcia.
And I'm your other host, Jerry Garcia.
So today we want to talk about everyone's favorite, quarterly planning.
I don't know if most people do quarterly plan.
What's my favorite?
It's great. I think it's important. We're about to enter a new quarter. I'm not sure exactly when this will air, but it should be right around the start of Q2 here in 2025. We wanted to talk about this and talk about kind of what we do to plan our quarters and those quarters for our clients and talk about what you should be doing to do the same.
Yeah. So I don't want anyone to get afraid of quarterly planning because it really doesn't have to be that big of a thing. Right?
No, the idea of just breaking down your year into quarters makes it a little more palatable, makes it a little more direction for that specific time frame, and allows you to pivot on shorter time frames. You don't want to spend an entire year doing something only to find out that it stopped work in week 2.
Well, and a lot of times I think it's interesting what we underestimate as humans, what we can get done in, say, a year or 2 years or 3 years, but we overestimate what we can get done in a day or a week. So that's why I like quarterly planning, because we can say to ourselves, at the beginning of the year, okay, this is what we want to do this year. And a lot of people, I think, naturally kind of do this. We say, we're kind of taught from little kids, what's your New Year's resolution? What's your intention for the next year? And so I think, in our businesses, we say to ourselves, okay, this year I'm going to do this much revenue. And I think a lot of people create revenue goals for the year. And that's, in my experience, generally where it all ends. It's this is the revenue I'm going to do. But then it's okay, where is the intentionality on how? We know what we want, but we haven't really decided how. And then I see a lot of times people, when they look at the quarters, I want to do 2 million for the year. So I'm going to do 500,000 a quarter. But that linear thinking isn't really generally in line with any business I've ever seen.
Just not reality. I mean, most businesses have some sort of an ebb and flow cycle of busy seasons and slow seasons.
Yeah, and then also if you're growing, you're not going to do the same in Q1 as you did in Q4, because hopefully you're growing your business. So hopefully if we're expecting, so then you're basically setting yourself up for very depressed first
failure.
Quarter, because you're well, I'm nowhere near my goal. It's yeah, but we still have 3 more quarters left. Let's create let's A, go with the seasonality of our business, and B, let's create structures that then create growth. So Q1 and Q4 are a completely different company.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, quarterly planning, it's more about the directionality, right? The intention. We can talk about all day, like you said, making that annual revenue plan, but then you got to backtrack and figure out, okay, how do you get there? Okay, that's when numbers and tracking comes into play. You really need to know how much of X, I close at this ratio. So if I want to close this much for this quarter, I have to schedule this many calls. Okay, well, how many calls do I get that are no-shows? Okay, so I have to have this many leads to get this many calls, to get this many closings, to get this much revenue.
Yes.
So that quarterly planning is a lot about that sort of thing, taking on not only just those numbers, but taking on the plan. Okay, we have to generate this many leads. Well, where are you going to do that? Okay, well, now it's about knowing which marketing generates what amount of leads. So if I spend X amount of dollars on this type of marketing, call it Google pay-per-click, then this is how many leads it draws, but it levels out once I hit a certain number. Okay, now we have to take the rest and put it into Facebook or print ads or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and all of that, if you're trying to do it on that macro level of a full year, becomes too much for our brains to handle. It just really does. We cannot think that far ahead. We get lost in the muck, and then we end up doing nothing. And so it's better to just snack it down, right? It's how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You have to create those bites in your business so that the bites actually happen. Because if you just sit there with an elephant on your plate, you're going to be stuck. So how do you create the unstuckness? By just creating those little snacks.
Yep, and it helps you kind of plan your year. I think the older we get, the quicker the years seem to go by, right?
God,
it's like a blink of an eye and it's been a year. That same thing is true with quarters, but it's even faster. And so by taking the time to slow down and really plan out that quarter, you know that you have to kind of dial things in quickly if you're going to actually have an impact on your quarterly numbers. So you are able to kind of dial in a little more. I feel like when you're taking on these smaller time frames, where it's very hard to kind of dial in what you want to do in a day because you have more on your plate than you can usually accomplish in a day. It's easier in a quarter to say, okay, here's everything that we need to do. Let's just work on this. And if you work on it from the beginning and work on it consistently, at the end of that quarter, you have a lot more reporting that goes on to know what worked and what didn't, and how you're going to change that plan for the next quarter.
Yeah. And there's a tool that I use that I really love that's in Scaling Up called the 13-week race. And it's literally just a page with 13 slots on it. And at the top is all the KPIs, and then it's just 13 slots. And you just slot out, like, okay, say we have a big project, like, okay, what am I going to accomplish this week? What am I going to accomplish that week in order to get it done by the end of the 13 weeks, which is one quarter? It is the simplest piece of paper, but it's, in my opinion, one of the most productive pieces of paper, because it forces you to say, okay, if I'm going to do this project, if I'm going to have this quarterly rock, what do I need to, that's going to be done by the end of the quarter? What has to happen each week leading up to it? And then instead of having one, the same thing, instead of having one big goal, you've given yourself a weekly goal of, okay, I'm going to do this week, this week, this the next week, every single week for those 13 weeks. And then you can check off, okay, did it happen? Did it not? Why not? And really start to think and get into the habit of those tiny little implementation steps that lead you to those big things.
Right. Because there's a lot that goes into the planning, right? There's the side of, okay, here's what we do every day. We have to continue to do these things, while also implementing this plan of growth on the other side, and making sure that those two things are working side by side. Because if you want to continue growing your business, there always has to be those two sides. You have to continue doing the thing that makes you the money, and you have to continue implementing whatever it is you're working on that quarter for growth. And so it's important that you're kind of creating that rhythm within your own business on who's working on what and when they're working on it, and then revisiting every 90 days to know that this is going to work.
Yeah, and you don't want to overwhelm. So I see some people, like, they're like, well, I have 15 things. I'm like, okay, cool, choose 2. And they're like, well, I want to do all 15. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, when you get the 2 done, you can add 2 more. But let's just choose 2 that are the most important. And it really forces you to focus, and it forces you to kind of slow down to speed up, because so many people are trying to do so many things that they don't do any of them well. And so if you just say, okay, this quarter, we're focusing on figuring out what is the linchpin number for you for that quarter, and then focusing all of your priorities around building into that linchpin number. So maybe it's sales, maybe it's profitability, maybe it's accounts receivable, whatever it is that you're going to focus on for the quarter. Maybe it's employee retention or customer service. There's a million different KPIs. Just choosing one and saying, this is our bottleneck, this is our focus point for the quarter, and we're going to align everybody and align everything, and then creating those priorities in that 13-week race for each of your staff is honestly like business changing.
Well, and then sticking to the plan, right?
Yes.
I think a lot of times it's very easy to see something and not see immediate results, and then just say, well, this isn't working, we need to pivot, we need to do something else. Like, no, it's more important to actually spend the full quarter implementing this plan so you can see if it actually works. Because a lot of times, there's a lot of lag indicators, a lot of lead indicators, and you're so focused on the things right in front of you that you don't see that everything you're doing is having an effect more toward the end of that quarter. And so if you cut it off too soon, you'll realize too late that you cut off something that actually was doing a lot for your business, but you just didn't realize it right at the time.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other reason I like that document where it's the individual, like the weekly goals, because it also, instead of, you're A, on track, but B, you can see those small wins. And so even if you feel far away from whatever goal you have, you can say, okay, yeah, I might still be 10 weeks away, but I did the first 3 weeks. I know I'm on track. I know I'm on pace for the end result that I'm desiring.
Yep. And it's always about maybe sticking to that plan, especially if you're working with somebody like us. Sometimes we're going to ask you to implement things that may not seem like they're doing much for you at the time. A lot of times you have to take a step back to establish a base, or to dial in something that is more important than what it appears to be behind the scenes, So it may look like it's actually accomplishing nothing, but realistically it's accomplishing the things that you're going to need to establish before you start to see that growth. A lot of times it's with documenting systems or whatever the case may be. That's not fun. It's not additional revenue generating. But once all that's established, those are the key foundations to allowing you to be able to then scale up and grow. And you'll see that growth, but it's, you have to be able to stick to a plan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like, previously I was saying that there is no overnight success, right? All those people built the foundation. And it's like you can't see that. So it's like, for instance, the Space Needle in Seattle, what a lot of people don't know is its center of gravity is actually underground. Like, because Seattle, they get like earthquakes and stuff. So they had to build it so that it would not fall down. But it's a big old tower. But what you don't see is everything that is underground. So think about how long it took to build all that, and how there was probably just a big old dirt patch for a really long time. And this is years ago, way before I was born. So I don't know, I wasn't there, but I'm assuming there was a big old dirt patch for a really long time, and people were like, man, they're not doing anything. But really, they were laying the most important parts, because they couldn't go that high without first going that low. So you have to lay that really strong foundation. And a lot of times that's not glamorous. The foundation is not glamorous. It's not flashy, but it's so necessary for going really, really to the heights that you want to go.
It's the same thing when the house is being built, right? You'll see the exterior of this house go up, and it looks like everything got built so fast, and then it seems like it does nothing for months. It's because inside they're building plumbing, they're putting in electricity, they're doing all the foundational things that make that house very livable. But from the outside, it looks like nothing is changing. So don't be afraid to take that step back in your business and really understand that you have to establish that foundation. So when you build up to that next level, that's your new floor. You don't want to build up 3 levels at a time and then have something go wrong and it all tumbles down and you have to rebuild those 3 levels. You build one level, establish that one, then you build up again. Even if something goes wrong, you're only falling down 1 level and you can rebuild from there.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why the quarterly planning really helps, right? Because you can create that through 1 quarter, and then you do the next one and the next one. And you will actually, by doing this cadence of quarters, you will get so much more done in a year or 3 years than you ever could imagine, because you create that cadence of implementation and of movement, even if it's just those week by week little snacks.
Because too often it becomes very comfortable. You get in a rhythm, things are going well, right? And so you don't want to change much because everything seems to be going okay. But then you get 3-4 years down the line, you're like, okay, well, nothing's happening. My business isn't growing. It's actually starting to fall off a little bit, because if you're not growing, you're actually really falling, because businesses around you will grow and change and establish new policies and implement new technology and things like that. And if you're not doing those things, your business will suffer in the long run. I mean, we've all seen those businesses that have been around forever, but they've been around for 20 years. And for the first 10 years of it, they were amazing. And they've been holding on because of those first 10 years being amazing. And slowly you start to see their decline because they're not doing anything to stay great.
Yeah. Greatness, you have to continue, right? You have to keep going and you have to keep refining, because the only thing that stays the same is that everything changes.
Absolutely. Make sure that you're willing to put in that work. I mean, it sounds kind of daunting to know that you're going to have to be constantly working on your business, but a lot of what we talk about establishing is to grow your business to the point where you're no longer responsible for a lot of that, and you get to pluck yourself out of the day-to-day business. And now your vision is being the visionary for your business. You get to establish that plan. You get to decide the direction of your business, and you have people below you who are going through and doing the implementing while you are taking the time to really treat your business like your baby. Where
you get to design it, and you get to be the one holding the direction, not necessarily doing all the do. And that's exciting too. And that's another reason why you need quarterly planning, because you have to be able to impart to your team the way, like, direction you're going and what their part is in that in a succinct manner. And so if you just take the time and just do a quarterly plan with them, then it's like, ready, break.
Yeah. So if you've never done it before, this is a great quarter to start. Even if you're not sure what you're doing, you can look it up. What do I do for quarterly planning for my business? Google it. Use AI to help you establish a plan. Here's what I want to accomplish, or ask. AI is a great tool. Use ChatGPT. There's the free version of it that will tell you enough if you're just kind of getting started with it, that it can really help you with little things that you're not thinking of. Just go in, ask about a quarterly plan, tell it what you do, tell it what you want to do this next quarter or what you want to accomplish, and let it create a plan for you. And use that, talk to your team, see if you can establish it. It may be clunky at first, but everything that you do is always going to be like that. When you first start a new habit, it's not going to be great. We've told our kids this. You have to be willing to suck at something to get great at it.
Yeah. Everybody who's great at anything first was terrible at it. And if you're like, you know what, I want somebody to hold my hand and help me and implement these quarterly plans with me, you know what, our link is always available. And this is one of the things we specialize in. So please reach out to yourpocketcfo.com and we would love to give you a free consultation to talk to you about quarterly planning and financial planning and all the fun, boring things that we love.
That are to make your business great.
Yes.
So.
Yes. So definitely reach out. Well, get that quarterly plan going so that you can lay the foundation for your Space Needle of a business.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sitting with us, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.